That evening remains stitched into my memory like a wound that never fully closed. The kind of moment where time doesn't slow, it stops. I was still wearing my cap, the tassel tangled in my hair, sweat clinging to the back of my neck from standing too long in a gown under the summer sun. The scent of roasted rosemary chicken filled the house, the laughter of relatives draped over the furniture like an old family quilt. Everyone was there, my aunts, uncles, cousins, smiling, sipping wine, congratulating me with polite nods and half-hearted claps. But I kept glancing toward Mom, waiting for something real. She promised me a gift, nothing extravagant. I wasn't expecting keys to a car or a check with too many zeros. I would have been moved by a pen, even a small heirloom, a letter, a note of pride in her handwriting. Just a moment that said, "I see you, Lily. I see what you did." So when she reached under the table and lifted out a tiny velvet box, my heart fluttered. It was burgundy, lined with gold trim, the kind you only buy when something matters. My fingers curled against my palms to steady myself, my breath shallow with anticipation. I thought, here it is, my moment. Then she turned, not toward me, but toward Megan. I stared. Mom's voice rang out like a bell that cracked as it echoed. "A little something for your early birthday," she said, her tone lilting with affection. She placed the box in Megan's manicured hands like a treasure passed down from royalty. I blinked. The air felt thick suddenly, clinging to my skin like syrup. Megan? Birthday? Her birthday was 2 months away, and she hadn't even stayed for my graduation ceremony, choosing instead to go to a beach weekend with her friends. Her eyes sparkled as she opened the box, revealing a delicate gold necklace with a small opal pendant, Mom's birthstone. That was supposed to be mine. I whispered before I even knew I was speaking. All heads turned. Mom barely glanced at me. "You didn't earn anything, Lily. Not like Megan has. She's been through so much lately." I felt my throat close up. Her words weren't sharp, they were surgical. Precise, designed not just to cut, but to remove something. Dignity, value, my place in that room. Earned? I had clawed my way through 4 years of hell. Woken at dawn to work before classes, stayed up until 2 on tweaking code, pitching investors in second-hand blazers, surviving on ramen and Red Bull. I skipped spring breaks, skipped parties, and built something real. I built myself. And none of that counted. Not to her. Everyone else looked away. No one stood up for me. No one said a word. I sat back, stunned, holding a paper plate with cake that suddenly looked as artificial as the smiles around me. My hands shook. The frosting began to melt onto my fingers. I didn't taste it. Couldn't. My stomach had hollowed out, replaced by something raw and burning. I wasn't mad about the necklace. I was mad that in her eyes I had never been enough to deserve one. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt nothing but fire. There's a certain kind of silence that forms over time, not the peaceful kind, but the type that thickens around your edges until you forget what your voice even sounds like. That was me, the quiet one, the strong one, the one who, according to my mom, never needed anything. From the time I was 12, I learned that if I wanted attention, I'd have to bleed for it. And even then, Megan would cry louder. Megan knew how to demand space. I knew how to disappear. I can still hear Mom's voice, casual and dismissive, anytime someone asked why I wasn't in the family photos, why I wasn't at the table when stories were being told. "She's just quieter," she'd say, a faint smile playing on her lips like it was a compliment. But it wasn't. It was a deflection, a tidy excuse to not look closer. Megan could break a glass and get comforted. I could win a statewide science competition and get a thumbs up over the sink. I remember once in high school, I brought home an award for academic excellence, one of only 3 given out in the entire district. Megan got a new iPhone that week because she had a rough semester. I thought if I worked harder, I could earn it. The pride, the validation. I poured myself into everything. Straight A's, volunteering, coding until my eyes blurred. I watched other parents beam at their kids just for tying their shoes. Meanwhile, I carried the weight of my future alone, always hoping Mom would one day look at me the way she looked at Megan when she got a new haircut. But it never came. By the time I got to college, the pattern was so baked into me that I didn't even consider reaching out for help. I waited tables, tutored freshman calculus, freelanced as a web developer, all while keeping a 4.0 GPA and laying the groundwork for my startup. I lived off cheap coffee, bulk rice, and ambition. Rent was paid late sometimes, but it was paid. I was broke, exhausted, and hungry for something I couldn't name. Not food, not sleep. Something deeper. Something like recognition. And still, Megan was the one Mom cried over. The one she bailed out of drama and debt. I was the one she forgot to call on birthdays. "You're so self-sufficient, Lily," she once said, like it was some badge of honor. But it wasn't a badge. It was a wall she built so she could lean on me without ever asking how much I was carrying. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was strong, that I didn't need anyone. But when she looked me in the eye that night and said I hadn't earned anything, after everything I'd done, I felt years of that silence turn to stone inside me. Not because I needed the gift, but because it confirmed what I'd feared all along. She never saw me. Not really. She saw what I could do for her. How little I asked. How tightly I held my life together so she never had to worry, and she mistook that for ease, for privilege, for lack of effort. But in reality, I'd been drowning with my head held high. And somehow, in the shock of her words, something inside me didn't just crack. It caught fire. For years, I had trained myself to hold back, to shrink just enough to stay digestible in rooms where my success might be too loud, too strange, too inconvenient. In my family, ambition was acceptable only if it came in the form of Megan's dreams, soft, dramatic, emotionally charged. But logic? Numbers? Building something scalable and lean and disruptive. That wasn't real to them. That was just Lily being in her own world again. What they didn't know was that my world had just been valued at $4.8 million. It was an AI-based medical billing platform I'd started in college, originally just a desperate attempt to simplify the paperwork nightmare for a local clinic where I'd volunteered. I spent nights teaching myself machine learning while everyone else was doing tequila shots. I built it in silence, pitched it in borrowed heels, cried in bathroom stalls when I got told no for the 5th time in one day, and then wiped the tears and rewrote the deck. I had bootstrapped it until my fingers bled on a keyboard. I had walked into rooms full of men who looked past me to find the real CEO. I had been told I was too young, too academic, too serious, too intimidating. And now the product was in 10 states. We'd just secured our Series A, led by 2 major venture firms. I'd been flown out to San Francisco to meet with healthcare leaders who'd once ignored my emails. My inbox was flooded with resumes. I'd won, quietly, strategically, without anyone clapping for me from the sidelines. And I had kept that victory close to my chest. Not out of secrecy, but because I wanted them to show me who they were before I showed them what I'd become. Now seated at the table under flickering chandelier light, with Megan still twirling that opal necklace between her fingers like a prize, the moment arrived. I gently placed my untouched plate of cake on the side table, stood up, and faced my mother. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. "You're right, Mom," I said, voice even, calm, almost too casual. "I didn't earn a necklace." A pause. Confusion flashed across her face like a camera flash, there and gone in a blink. "I earned something else," I continued, folding my hands in front of me. "Like a $4.8 million valuation, my company just closed a Series A." Silence collapsed over the room like a dropped curtain. Her wine glass froze halfway to her lips. "What?" "I'd own 74% of it," I said, allowing the words to land. "Next year we'll be hiring 50 new employees. It's going to be a national rollout." My father's fork clattered against his plate. Megan sat rigid, blinking like she was trying to process a foreign language. But Mom's expression fractured. She tried to maintain the same saccharine smile she'd given Megan just minutes earlier, but her mouth twitched and her eyes fell flat. She had lost control of the narrative, and she knew it. "That's nice, dear," she said finally, each word dragged, brittle. "Nice." That was all she could summon. Not congratulations. Not "I'm proud of you." Just nice, as if I'd told her I got a good parking spot at the mall. But I didn't flinch. Because underneath that hollow reply, I could see the truth. Her worst fear wasn't that I'd failed. It was that I'd thrived without her. That I had soared past every limit she quietly placed on me, and I hadn't even paused to look back. And suddenly, I didn't need her praise. Because I'd already proven everything I needed to myself. Respect, when it finally arrived, didn't come with a bow or an apology. It came in fragments, small, almost imperceptible shifts in the way my mother spoke to me. The silence that had once been her preferred method of dismissal turned into phone calls, brief at first. Awkward even. She started asking about things she'd never once shown interest in. "How's the hap? Is that what it's called?" Her voice lacked confidence in the terminology, but not in the intent. It was a clumsy bridge she was trying to build after years of pretending the chasm wasn't there. I let her try, but I didn't build the other half. The truth is, something inside me had cooled since that night. Not hardened, just cooled, like steel left to settle after being forged in fire. I no longer needed her warmth to survive. I had spent so long trying to earn her love through achievement, chasing it like a child running after a balloon in the wind. Now that it drifted back toward me, I stood still and watched it float. Megan, on the other hand, wasn't nearly as subtle. She played the part of indifference like a high schooler pretending not to care about prom. I saw it in the way she scrolled through her phone faster when I spoke, the way her compliments landed like veiled insults. "You've always been intense," she said once when I told her we'd signed a contract with one of the largest private hospital networks in the state. Guess that finally worked for something. I didn't respond. There was no need. Her jealousy was loud even when her voice was quiet. But I didn't rub it in. Not because I was noble, but because it wasn't about them anymore. My success wasn't crafted for revenge or recognition. It was built in the image of someone much smaller, much younger, and far more fragile. The girl who used to bite her lip until it bled in campus restrooms because she couldn't find the courage to raise her hand in a room full of confident boys. The girl who juggled triple shifts and slept 4 hours a night because her dream was too loud to ignore. The girl who got ghosted by her own mother every time Megan had a meltdown that demanded the entire household's attention. That girl deserved the world, and she'd waited long enough. So I gave her something tangible, a graduation gift that no one could take or redirect or repurpose for someone else's birthday, a space of my own. A clean-lined, sunlit studio loft with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that wrapped around the skyline like a promise. No roommates, no shared walls, no hand-me-down furniture. Everything in it was chosen, earned, and paid for by me, in cash. I moved in on a Tuesday alone. I brought in a single suitcase, a French press, and a thick stack of business cards with my name etched in clean black font. It wasn't just a place to live. It was a declaration. I'm here now. I'm seen. By me if no one else. A few weeks after the Velvet Box debacle, my phone buzzed with a message from Mom. No preamble, no emojis, just a question. "Will you be coming to Megan's engagement party?" I stared at the screen for a long moment. The text was simple, but the history behind it wasn't. Megan's engagement had been the latest family headline, plastered across group chats and Instagram feeds like a royal event. I hadn't received a personal call, not even a cursory update. Just a mass invitation and now this follow-up, as though my presence were optional but preferred, for optics if nothing else. Still, I said yes. Not because I owed it to anyone, but because I'd earned the right to show up on my terms. When I arrived at the venue, a country club wrapped in white linen and pale pink florals, I noticed the seating chart near the entrance, names scrawled in cursive across faux parchment. I scanned for mine, half expecting to be tucked near the back with second cousins and forgotten plus ones. But there it was, Lily Carter, table 2. With the adults, with the core family. I almost laughed. When Mom came over, smoothing imaginary wrinkles in her dress, she said, "See? Right up front." Her voice was overly cheerful, too high in pitch. A practiced hospitality, not warmth. It was as though she were trying to make a correction without acknowledging the mistake. I gave her a half smile. "Will I be getting a gift this time too?" She chuckled nervously, eyes darting to the guests. "Don't be like that." But I was like that, sharp, observant, unwilling to let the past fade just because it was inconvenient. And yet, I didn't press. I wasn't here to settle scores. I was here to make peace with myself. I stayed for an hour, long enough to sip one flute of champagne, greet relatives I hadn't seen since high school, and watch Megan hold court like a princess at a coronation. She wore a silk dress and a ring so large it caught light with every flick of her hand. Her fiancé, Parker, seemed nice enough, quiet, attentive, a shadow orbiting her gravitational pull. Eventually, I slipped out quietly, unnoticed by most. My car was waiting outside, a hybrid SUV I'd bought outright last month, again in cash. No one helped me into it. No one waved goodbye. But I didn't feel slighted. I felt free. Because while Megan was basking in the center of attention, I was building something lasting, something real. I was finalizing partnerships, onboarding a CTO, managing a rapidly expanding team of engineers and designers who looked to me for leadership. I wasn't a guest at someone else's celebration, I was the architect of my own. And the best part, I no longer needed my mother's approval as currency. That night at the graduation dinner, when she handed Megan the necklace and told me I had earned nothing, I had handed her something far heavier in return. The truth. That I had succeeded without her. That I had never needed her validation to shine. That while she was busy crowning one daughter, the other was building a throne from nothing. A throne made of grit, sleepless nights, risks no one saw, and choices no one understood. That truth, cold and undeniable, had landed like a stone in the middle of her carefully curated image of control. It cost me years of silence, but giving it to her, without rage, without begging, was worth more than any trinket she could have ever placed in a box. Because what I earned wasn't jewelry. It was self-respect. And no one can take that from me.